All Things Data podcast. In the spirit of Daniel Kahneman, Peter Diamandis, and Google Moonshots, brings together leading data scientists, technologists, business model experts, and futurists to discuss how to utilize, harness, and deploy data science and data-driven strategies to enable digital transformation. The hosts are Dr. Manjeet Rege, Associate Professor of Data Science, and Dan Yarmoluk, Director of Business Development of IoT and Data Science. The podcast is produced by the Graduate Programs of Software of the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota.
You are listening to the All Things Data podcast. My name is Manjeet Rege. So on this show, we talk about big data, data science, IoT, amongst many other things. With me, I have my co-host, Dan Yarmoluk. Hi, Dan.
How you doing, Manjeet? Great to be back. And, we have a great guest, an acquaintance of mine, Daniel Elizade, and I'll do a little introduction of him. He's a seasoned technology product leader with over 18 years of experience developing connected products for startups and global companies alike. He's the founder of Tech Product Management, where he trains product managers to become highly successful at managing IoT products. He's the author of a leading blog in IoT product management and the creator of the IoT Decision Framework. Also, Daniel teaches a popular course, Product Management for the Internet of Things, at Stanford Continuing Studies. He can be found on Twitter at @delizade or at techproductmanagement.com, and I'll put that in the show notes. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, Manjeet, as well.
So Daniel, for our listeners unfamiliar with the Internet of Things, can you explain the evolution of IoT in our day-to-day lives amongst many businesses, and why is it so important now?
That's a great question, Manjeet. And I think that one of the mysteries that people think about IoT is that it's something new that is just coming up as the latest trend. And in reality, for us that have been in this connected business for a while, we've been doing it for 20 years, and the technology has evolved. So it used to be just machine to machine, it's called M2M, and then it was not using cloud, but it was just on-premise servers, and we were doing it with direct connection, not through the internet. But this idea of connecting physical devices that have sensors that can acquire data and be aggregated to provide some value has been around for a while. Now, IoT has this connotation more of a next generation. It's partially a rebranding of the same group of technologies. The reality is that technology has advanced so much that it is now a lot easier and a lot cheaper to build this kind of systems. The hardware has gotten a lot cheaper and a lot smaller. The sensors have a lot more power and they're a lot more affordable. Networks have grown significantly and the infrastructure for sending data to the cloud itself and its adoption and its capabilities. So all these trends together allows us to leverage this idea of adding sensors into the real world to gather that data and be able to provide analytics and artificial intelligence to better understand our environment and to add value to our customers. Mm-hmm. So I think it is very important because a lot of industries are leveraging this concept. Industries like healthcare, energy, the military, transportation, they're all looking at how can they better solve the problems that they've had forever, right? Problems like maximizing throughput, increasing yield, uptime. It's just now that these technologies give them a much better ability to look into how their assets and devices are operating and basically talk to these devices, have some intelligence to solve problems that they had forever in a way that is better, faster, and cheaper. So that's why it's such a big revolution.
I was really fascinated with your background and with what you do these days, which is education and training with regards to IoT. Can you talk us a little bit about what led to you forming the Tech Product Management, and why did you get into education with IoT?
I've always loved education, and I was mentioning to you before, one of my first jobs was to be a professional instructor for a company called National Instruments, and I would go around the world training people on this technology. And I've always liked that aspect. And for me, that evolved into having a career in product management where I could talk to people, understand their challenges, and then build products, and also educating the rest of the company about the customer's needs. And so I've always had that. And after a few years many years of doing product management for multiple companies, I started a blog, techproductmanagement.com, to share a lot of this knowledge that I have gathered throughout the years and be able to get response from people and see, are you seeing the same things, right? It's more of a therapeutic thing for me to say, hey, I'm having these issues. Have you seen the same thing? And as the blog started to gain momentum, I learned that there was a lot of confusion about how to build this IoT product. And I was experiencing that myself. Even though I had a lot of experience and I was head of product for a company, I was really struggling with explaining to the rest of the company and to my customers and to sales and to even to my own product team, what exactly are we doing, how the pieces fit together. And so that's where the idea of building a framework came about. Mm-hmm. So I designed the IoT decision framework, and I, as a good product person, I started prototyping it, and I piloted with a few people, and I created a blog post that got a lot of interest. And from there, I was able to develop a complete methodology, a whole blueprint, so to speak, on how to manage IoT products based on this framework. And then I had the fortune of being able to get in touch with Stanford University and be able to teach IoT product management in their continuing education program. So I run a course there that has been really, really successful. And I've been training people from industry, not students, but people from industries. So people from companies like Cisco and Google and Amazon and Intel and Tesla come to my classes, and mm-hmm. we share this knowledge and figure out what's going on, what's working, what's not working. And so after a little bit of doing this, I decided that I wanted to do this full time. I'm really passionate about this because there's two things. I think IoT is going to be the next big revolution, and it's already happening. And one of the biggest challenges that companies have is education, because this is very complex. And so I want to put my grain of sand there and help. And also I'm very passionate about the product management profession. And I believe that the majority of products in 3 to 5 years from now are going to be connected products. So as a profession, we need to have the knowledge and the tools on how to manage IoT products. So I made that my mission. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to launch Tech Product Management as a company, go on my own. And now I launched a online certification program for Internet of Things product managers. I mm-hmm. run that on my website. I continue teaching at Stanford, and I do corporate workshops and keynote speaking and things like that. But it's all about, instead of focusing on working on one company, improving one product, I want to have bigger reach and be able to reach more people and say, hey, this is the experience that I've had. I want to share it with you so that we can all move forward as a profession and as an industry with these new trends.
Daniel, can you break down the codified process within the IoT product management framework?
Yes, I can walk you through what the framework is and then tell you a little bit about how I decided and why I decided that way. So one of the biggest things for me from the framework, and I believe you will add a link to the framework in the show notes, so you can see there's a visualization there that it looks kind of like a matrix. And it has two parts. On the x-axis, it has what I call the IoT technology stack. I've learned that every single IoT product, regardless of industry or vertical, has this 5 conceptual components. And these are the device hardware, device software, communications, cloud platform, and cloud applications. And I know that it's a simplification, but it's a simplification for a reason, because it's the whole goal is to be able to abstract the complexity and communicate with others. And so the whole framework revolves around understanding what decisions you need to make from a product perspective around each one of these layers. And so I cataloged the key decision areas that I think are important for product people to understand. And the 6 decision areas are UX, data, business, technology, security, and standards and regulations. And so the idea of the framework is to evaluate the decisions, let's say for UX, at the device hardware level, at the device software level, at the communications level, cloud platform level, and cloud applications. So that way you have some sort of a blueprint or a checklist, if you will, of all the different questions that you need to ask and all the different decisions that you need to make so that you can build a cohesive product strategy. And so in my courses, either online or Stanford, I break down this whole framework and teach people all the different decisions and methods and approaches that you have to have at each one of these layers. Would you like me to talk more about each of the different layers, or?
Okay, please.
Very quickly, the UX decision area has to do with understanding who are your users, both customers and internal users. Because a big challenge with IoT is that there's a lot more users than in non-connected products. So understanding the users and their needs is the goal of that decision area. And you have to do that at each layer of the technology stack. So who are the users of my device hardware? Who are the users of my device software? Who are the users of my cloud platforms, etc.? When you get especially into industrial applications, you will find out that people that install the system are different than people that maintain the system, that are different than people that have reports on the system, right? So you have to understand all those things. Once you understand your users and their needs, then you move to the next decision area, which is data, which I know is a focus for you, and I think it's one of the big advantages of IoT, be able to gather all this data to provide value. So that decision area focuses on what data needs to flow through the IoT technology stack. For example, what data needs to be acquired and processed at the device hardware level. So what sensors do you need and what processing power do you need? What data needs to be processed and analyzed and how at the device software level? What data needs to be transmitted to the cloud? How often? How much? What kind of resiliency do you want? And then once you get to the cloud platform, what data needs to be stored, analyzed, ingested? What other third-party types of data do you want to collect or expose? What APIs are you opening up, etc.? And then in the cloud applications, what data are you showing to the user, and how are you providing value through the endpoint applications that you're building? So once you complete the data decision area, comes the business decision area. And here, the idea is to understand how to monetize your solution, what are your costs, and your build versus buy decisions. And again, you can have this analysis at each layer of the technology stack. So are you going to monetize your solution as a whole, or are you going to monetize your device hardware or your device software? Are you going to charge your customer for the communication to the cloud, or are you just going to blend it in? How are you going to pay for your cloud platform, etc.? And so calculating monetization approach, cost, and build versus buy, which is very important, is all the different things that I share and that I teach in that business area. Mm-hmm. And then the next layer is the technology. So the next decision area is the technology decision area. So now that you know who are your users, their needs, the data that flows through the system, and how you're going to make money, then you can focus on understanding what technology you need to implement that strategy. A lot of companies just jump directly into the technology selection, but you don't really know the basis of what technology is going to do. So I always advocate, figure out the problem space first, and then you jump into the solution space. In the technology decision area, you work with engineering to evaluate what technology do you need at the device hardware level, device software level, communications, etc. From a product management perspective, it's more about understanding the guidelines that we need to give engineering and understanding what partnerships we need to bring to the table from outside vendors so that we can build our own ecosystem. So a little bit of a vendor management and technology selection more than the traditional just building technology from scratch. Once you select the technology, then you can go to the security decision area. And the goal here is to think in advance. Before you build anything, what's the worst that could happen if your device gets hacked? And you can do that by breaking the problem into what happens to the device hardware, to the device software, to the communications. So you see the pattern, right? By breaking it into this matrix type approach, it makes the problem a lot more digestible. And the goal of including security in the framework is that it makes you think about security before you start developing anything at all. So you are baking security into your design process from the very beginning. The last decision area is standards and regulations, and this is an area that a lot of companies miss out, but regulations can make or break your product. And so by looking at what regulations impact your product at each layer of the stack, so what regulations impact your device hardware, your device software, communications, etc., you can make a plan and figure out how to solve that. And then the key is that once you finish all the decision areas, which should be able to take you a day of working with your team, then you iterate. You go back to the UX area again. And the reason is because the decisions that you make throughout are going to affect all areas. So for example, if in the UX area you decide that the best possible experience has to do with, a wearable device that a doctor should use, and then you start going through the other decision areas, and it turns out that, well, you can't have the processing power that you wanted for the data there, or that the cost of that device is going to get you outside of market, or that it's too easy to hack. So you need to adjust all the different areas. And my thought is, after you do a couple of passes, you get to some sort of a steady state where all the decisions in the framework are consistent with each other, and that's when you get to a robust and cohesive product strategy, right? When the decisions across UX and data and business and technology, they all support each other, then you have a cohesive strategy. So that is the framework, and of course, through my courses, I have full methodology on how to approach each of the sections, but the framework serves two purposes: giving you this map and also having a shared language that you can share with the rest of your company so that everybody can point to the same thing and everybody can be talking about the same thing.
I was looking at the IoT product management certificate that you just mentioned about, right? The certificate that you have developed is aimed at current and aspiring IoT product managers. Now, if you think about it, maybe like 5 years ago, we did not have that particular job profile exist. So this is a relatively new position that we are envisioning. How would you define a job profile for an IoT product manager? Would that person be responsible for all the parts of the framework that you just mentioned, or would you be responsible for parts of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the caveat is that IoT as a discipline, like we're talking about, is fairly new, so we're figuring it out. Product management, more established, but still fairly new, right? A lot of companies are still trying to understand what a product manager does. So it's a double challenge. And when I talk to companies, that they often ask me to help them with their job descriptions or to vet candidates, I think that companies need to understand what is the role of the product manager in this aspect, which is to help solidify the strategy of the product and be that hub between the multiple departments and the customer. Now, one of the challenges that product managers have when getting into IoT is, like you mentioned, IoT is very big. So it's really hard to be an expert on all of these areas. Usually I see people coming either from cloud software, embedded software, or hardware. Those are like the three areas, right? And then, of course, there's people that are planning to come into product management, and they have to get the fundamentals first, which, there's a lot of different ways to do that. And so in my view of things, and the way that I have organized my teams in the past, is that a product manager should be very strong in one of the IoT technology stack areas. So it should be a very strong hardware product manager, or should be a very strong cloud platform product manager. And that's their area of expertise. And then they need to have horizontal knowledge on how the different pieces work together. So what is the development lifecycle and processes for each of the other areas, and what are the interfaces and the trade-offs? And it usually has to do with data and integration testing. So that way they can collaborate with other teams and other product managers. And then the other angle that I've seen is that sometimes you have somebody that has a lot of industry expertise. And so that person might not be strong in any of the technology areas. It's more of a business-focused product manager. And they bring a lot of value, but they also have to understand the life cycle and development processes of each of the areas. So ultimately, a PM that owns one of the vertical areas of the technology stack needs to know all the decision areas. So if you're a cloud PM, then you should be familiar with how the whole stack fits together, but then you should be an expert in the UX aspects of the cloud, the data aspects of the cloud, the business aspects of the cloud, the technology aspects, and so on. And so ultimately, as a head of product, what you're building is a very solid product team, not a product person. And that's one of the challenges that I see companies making, is that they want this one person that knows everything. And, it's too big. Nobody does. So building a strong team that together can cover the whole framework, that's what I've seen companies start trying for, and they're starting to be successful there.
Daniel, can you comment on, the complexities of the product management in general, all the different technologies, and then where we have this new issue of IT and OT, and that's informational technology and operational technology, being that we're getting tech-savvy guys in a very complicated environment, and you're laying out a great framework, yet are you concerned about the lack of domain expertise or business expertise being pulled into the informational technology portion of it?
I am. That's a great question. And the way I see things is that product management for IoT is product management first, and IoT is more of a specialization. So a product manager, in my view of the world, needs to have very strong soft skills, because they need to be advocating and communicating with everybody. We're a hub. Right? They need to have great business skills to understand how they provide value and create money for their company. They need to have some technology acumen, and they need to have strong domain knowledge. Right? So those things are, in my opinion, very, very important for every product manager. And then if you have that, then you can actually add the rest of the areas for IoT. So for example, if somebody is a strong product manager for hardware, usually they're a strong hardware PM in a specific industry, let's say healthcare, and that value, that experience is invaluable, right? And then, so as you're building a team, you should be able to provide that. And I think it's a responsibility of the head of product to build that team and to provide the training for the gaps they are lacking. So if you bring somebody that is very, very technical, it's your responsibility as head of product to make sure that they learn that domain knowledge, or that at least you pair them with a subject matter expert. If they have very strong subject matter expertise, but they don't know technology, it's your responsibility to get them up to speed, right? And that's how everything needs to be balanced up. But I think the important part is just to understand that a single person is not going to know everything, and it's just a matter of the company needs to have a product culture that fosters building the teams that are strong in all the necessary areas.
Daniel, as part of the framework, you mentioned about data being one of the components there. Can you talk about the importance of the right data collection and perhaps even data cleaning and preparation, because not every data that gets collected could be analyzed directly after that?
Having a very clear data strategy is very important for any IoT product. And that data strategy starts with understanding what is the goal that you're trying to achieve? Like, why are you collecting all this data to begin with? And then you work backwards. If this is the goal, therefore you're going to need this data from this third-party cloud providers. Your device hardware is going to have to acquire this data at this rate. And in my courses, I actually go through several exercises about data acquisition and clenching and speed rates and all those things. But I think the important thing, what I see some of the challenges companies face, is that they don't realize that machines can acquire data at tremendous rates. And so they start with the technology part of the data acquisition, and then they say, we'll figure out what we're going to do with that data later. And what happens is that they get inundated with a lot of data, becomes hard to manage, it becomes very costly, and they're not getting any value. And then once they realize what questions they were really looking to solve, they realize they didn't acquire the right data. So that's why I always say, start with the problem that you want to solve. And I think it's okay to understand that you might be in an R&D type of setting, and you have some hypotheses, and based on the data, you're going to try to see what the data tells you. But you are, after some hypothesis, right? You're not just saying, give me all the data in the world and we'll try to figure out what we can do with it. Right? So I think that's the importance of how that. And so data acquisition at the right rate, with the right sensors, at the right resolution, and then going through a cleansing stage so that you can have just the right data that can go into your analytic models, into your learning models or digital twins. That's the whole process, right? But you're starting with the why do you need this in the first place?
Just to go back to your certificate, what is the background that you would expect a student perhaps trying to get into the field of IoT should have, or even for your own certificate, what is the required prior knowledge do you expect the student to have?
The certificate program is targeted towards product managers that want to transition to IoT. So I say that there's really no strict requirements, but you can get the most out of it if you already have product management knowledge, because you will be able to relate to a lot of the concepts that I'm saying, and you'll be able to apply them and go deeper with them. Because I don't cover in my certificate, I don't cover any of the basics of product management, like prioritization models and, working with engineering teams. And, I'm planning to maybe do some of those programs later, but I'm focusing on here's what is different from IoT product management. And I think that's the key, because it's more of a specialization. And I want to say, if you're a PM, this is what you need to know to get your knowledge to the next level. Now, I've had a lot of feedback from people that are wanting to get into product management that take my courses and my certificate program, and they say, you know what, this gave me actually a lot of basis so that I know what I need to go learn more. And then the third type of person that takes my classes is executives. And because they might not want to get into the nitty-gritty of managing a product, but the course helps them understand the complexities and how everything fits together. So if they are evaluating a product idea, or they just want to understand how to build a team or what it takes to manage IoT, I've had a lot of executives go through my courses. So that's kind of the approach that I've seen.
I see. If I draw a parallel with big data or data science fields, you have a hierarchy of job profiles, going from data engineers, data scientists, and then ultimately a chief data officer. We've been talking about IoT product managers. Do you envision, that particular role expanding into others, perhaps doing more low-level work and having a more of a higher-level executive management in the future, in particular with IoT?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the path that we are seeing today for product managers, which people come from all different backgrounds to product management, and you usually start as an associate product manager, as a junior PM, then you become a product manager, then a senior product manager, director, and then probably VP or chief. And the difference of the role is how tactical it is, right? If you're up to like a senior PM, you're still doing a lot of the tactical work with the teams. The moment you become director or above, you're doing more of the strategy. And so I think we're going to see exactly the same thing with IoT. And the challenge of going from like a PM or senior PM to a director position where you have to be more strategic is that all of a sudden you're going to have to deal with the whole stack all at once. Like you might be an expert on, let's say, cloud, and all of a sudden you are asked to manage the hardware team as well, right? So that's going to be an interesting challenge. But if my prediction is accurate whatsoever, I think that 5 years from now or so, a lot of products are going to be connected products. So it's not going to be something that is just an edge case. So a lot of companies are going to have to deal with this, and a lot of PMs are going to have to deal with this. The example that I give is with mobile technology. When the iPhone launched 10 years ago, a couple of years later, we were scrambling as product managers to figure out how do you build a mobile application and what does it take and how is it different. Today, we don't even think about it. Today, most software products have a mobile component, and you don't even call it out. It's just the way you build products, right? The same is going to happen, I believe, with IoT. That it's just most products are connected, and that's just how you build products. It's just that the complexity grows exponentially, and that's the challenge that I'm trying to address with my mission of training, which is get us ready for that next stage, right? And that's going to permeate at all levels of the organization, from associate all the way to chief.
Daniel, one question I had was, as you're designing product value and product management, and you're saying, what's the business question? What data do you want to collect? What are your thoughts as to the next generation? Of course, today you want to answer a business question that has a specific data set you want to collect. At the same time, you want a little bit of robustness to go, okay, if I could organize some more data, perhaps we could deploy things like machine learning, deep learning to be able to get some more nuanced information. So how do you balance the today with the potential of tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And I think that's one that most companies are trying to figure that out, because things move very, very fast. The way I think about it is that I think those efforts need to be run in parallel, and the product team needs to be focused on providing solutions for answers that are known, and therefore building the product stack to support that and provide value to customers and revenue to the company. At the same time, there should be a parallel effort, which is more of an R&D effort, that is looking at the data for what's next, right? And so the interaction between product management and data scientists is paramount, right? Product managers can work with data scientists to put requests, quote unquote, on how can we solve these questions that we have. But it also works the other way around. Data scientists can say, based on the data, this is some extra value that we can provide, with customers willing to pay for it, right? And that just happens. It has to happen at the same time. And so when companies are developing their first prototypes, they have to have those two things in mind. They have to be able to have the hardware that acquires the right data to provide value today, but also gives these extra things so that the data science team can actually do their experimentation for the next generation. Your cloud platform needs to be able to store that data in different data lakes. So you have your production environment and you have your R&D environment. And there's a synergy between those two that has to be interwoven, and it has to result in faster iteration and more value quicker. But the challenge that I've seen with those kind of things is that it takes a corporate culture of product to set up teams that way, and to be able to fund the teams that way, and have the interconnections between the teams so that you can actually work that way. And some of the top companies are doing it. It's hard, but that's, I think, the state of where we are today. Is that similar to what you've seen?
Well, that's where I think we want to go, and that's part of the idea with having you on. It's a data science-driven podcast, but we're starting to see the need for data scientists to become more business-oriented and more business guys to become aware of the technology and tools that is driven by data science. So that is the genesis of having this conversation, and we'd like to thank you, Daniel, for being on the podcast. Where can people find more out about you or reach out to you if they have any questions?
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate the invitation. You can find me at techproductmanagement.com. My website has all the information. It has links to my courses and newsletters. You can join my community and just keep up to date with the latest IoT efforts and product management. And also in Twitter at the Elizade. And I'll look forward to connecting more with you. I think data science is one of the key disciplines that is going to make or break this next generation of products. And just like a few years ago, product management and UX as disciplines had to figure out how to work together because this is needed. I think now the next generation is how can data science be 100% involved in the development lifecycle from conception to release as a key player, right? So it's no longer just engineering, then engineering and PMs, and then engineering and UX. Right now, this team has to have data science driving a lot of the decisions and being a key player with a seat at the table. So I'm very excited to see that forward.
Fantastic, Daniel. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.